This is episode 51 of the Fire Protection Podcast, powered by InspectPoint. Today, my guests are Rick Heffernan from SDi and Oliver Doerle from Detector Testers over in the UK. SDi and Detector Testers are partnered, one company. They're the manufacturers of the product to do fire alarm, smoke, and heat detection. I'm looking up in the air right now because I'm pretending I have a pole, a solo pole or a Testifire. They've got a new product coming out called the XTR2. So we get into that, but also get into the whole industry of fire alarm testing in general. So it was cool to have them both on because obviously Rick's on NFPA 72 in a wide variety of communities in North America and NFPA, and Oliver's more on the UK and the European side of things. So there's some nice banter back and forth between the two at the company, but also just talking about fire alarm and detection and testing that in general. So it's cool to have them on, and looking forward to a further partnership with them moving forward. So on to the podcast. Again, like and subscribe. Check us out at fireprotectionpodcast.com. All right. We're here with Rick and Oliver from I guess Rick's on the SDi side and Oliver's on the Detector Tester side. Rick Heffernan from SDi and Oliver. I already messed it up, Oliver.
Don't, it's Oliver Doerle. So it's a very difficult one. It's a German name, so I've got so many different people pronouncing it in different ways, so it's absolutely fine.
That is a horrible accent, Oliver. Oliver Doerle. I'll have to translate since we don't have subtitles on this.
All these years in the UK, and I still have that accent. I'm really sorry, Rick.
Rick, I could turn the when we record this, I'll put the subtitles on after, like you requested. So.
Oh, very good.
Oliver, where are you located? You're over in the UK, right?
Yeah, I'm based near London, so where Detector Testers is based. So yeah, really great place. Very close to London, easy. Big city, of course, global city. So it's a fantastic place.
Yeah, I plan on going over there probably in the next 6 months. My sister-in-law just got accepted for a master's degree over King's College. Is it King's College?
Wow. No, yeah, King's College. I mean, that's a really good one as well. So, and London is always fantastic. I mean, my parents are here at the moment, staying with me this week. And, we went to see London, do a little bit of sightseeing, a little bit of Buckingham Palace, had afternoon tea at the Savoy Hotel. And, it's fantastic. It's just so much to do and so much to see. So
that's great.
Really good.
That's cool.
You're really quite an aristocrat, Oliver. Well, you're quite an aristocrat.
Thank you very much. I take that as a compliment for you, Rick. Oh.
Rick, you're a little bit opposite, right? You're on the. Where are you? You're in Jersey, right?
Well, normally I don't. I try to hide that, but yes, SDi. I'm with SDi, and we're based out of scenic Neptune, New Jersey, on the East Coast. Generally, I don't tell anyone that, Drew. So thanks for outing.
Hey, it's a beautiful area. Like this, especially this time. September is the best month to be. I feel like in the Northeast, like shore area, right?
Oh, absolutely, yeah. The coast is really nice. It is quite. It's pretty.
All the craziness, the tourists are gone, and you can kind of have the beach to yourself.
Absolutely. Yep. Absolutely.
So, feel free to take these questions, and I may direct a couple of them to you guys individually, but just for the listenership out there, right? I want to discuss some of the new stuff you guys have coming out, but I guess give me the history of Detector Testers, how SDi has been mixed into that and brought into that, and what that looks like in the current world.
Sure. I guess, well, Oliver, I'll save you the trouble of cracking and making a joke about my age, since I'm older and have been here longer. I guess I'll handle it, and then you could pick up or correct me. Detector Testers, as it's called now, originally started off, it's funny, completely out of this industry. The original name for the company, and it was founded back in the late 60s by, I don't know, the guy's name was Olaf or Klaus. I can't remember what it was. It was Olaf.
Klaus is my dad, so Olaf it is.
The name of the company was Cable Strippers, and the products were cabling tools, wire tools, etc. Not even in this industry in the slightest bit.
Wow.
The company was very small. It was a one-man band, and it gradually grew. Then they really wanted to expand their range a bit, so they got into light bulb changing equipment. Really sexy and exciting there. And then in the late 1980s, that's where everything really changed, and we came into this industry. And I'll give a shameless plug to my former partner, Bill Rossiter. The Rossiter family bought Cable Strippers, and the name was changed to No Climb Products. And then that's where it all basically started getting into the fire protection industry. We started out with manufacturing smoke dispensers that basically just held the can up there with no closed mechanism, no closed dispenser, heat detector testers, detector removal tools, and slowly expanding our portfolio. One of the things we actually came up with right before SDi got involved in the picture was our True Test sensitivity tester, which is still going today. That was around 1996 vintage.
Oh, wow.
1997, that's when I came, well, not me, my family came into the picture. SDi was born. Detector Testers had No Climb had been selling in the UK and Europe, but they hadn't really had any traction in the Americas. So they were looking for an American representative, and Detector Testers, SDi stepped up to the plate with that. And that's how we got involved. Things still progressed, and we actually started moving into this next generation of smoke generation technology. We started getting away from the can smoke and went into electronic smoke dispensers, and we released in the, I guess, mid 2000s Testifire. We also released after that the next generation of that, which was Solo 365, and we also came out with a product. Lately, we hear about all these self-testing detectors that's going on in the industry, and are we there yet? When's it going to happen? Well, actually, we came out with a product that predates all that, Scorpion, which we just started selling in the US market. Basically, you can test any detector in place, and it works with everybody. It's agnostic.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's something we've just started selling in the Americas more recently. I believe, Oliver, you've and incidentally, I have to correct myself. No Climb then became Detector Testers right around 2007,
I think it is. 2007.
And so let's see. Then it was Detector Testers and SDi. We were still two separate companies, merrily, paddling our canoe. And then in September of 2021. There was a change, and we were acquired by Inflection out of London. They're a private equity firm, and they actually brought the both of us together and formally. So now we're considered, we're part of the group, SDi and Detector Testers. So we're the same company, but we operate independently. SDi more or less handles this hemisphere. Oliver and crew handle the rest of the world. Unless we poach some sales in places we want to go to, like Australia or someplace nice.
Well, I saw you were just down in...
I didn't hear that, Rick.
As I said, we were acquired in 2021 by Inflection out of London, and actually it's been a really positive change for us. It's actually allowed us to accelerate our growth and innovation and unlock some more potential here. And that brings us to the present day, where we have this new product that's coming out, the XTR2. I got the name by the old Propius development. But this is it's a really, I'm saying it's a great product. What would you expect me to say? Because it's ours, but it truly is. And it's now in addition to being smoke generation, it's also part of the Internet of Things. It's a truly connected product. So it's recording all of the tests as you're doing it. But I won't get into it. I'm just here telling you the history, the boring history.
No, that's great. You may know this more. So you guys have obviously big in obviously the biggest on the detection testing kind of piece of the market, right? Which is a niche inside a niche inside a niche, which is, it's still large because fire alarm systems are essentially at every building and even a lot of residential multifamily stuff like that. You know, and the requirements per NFPA or ULC in Canada or UK or wherever you're at globally requires that probably pretty on an annual, at least an annual frequency.
Yeah, I mean, it's quite fascinating. I mean, Rick and I talk about it quite a bit because we cover, you know, Rick, of course, is super big in all the codes and standards in the Americas. And, you know, and of course, we have got similar standards in other countries, including the UK and Europe. But it is fascinating because where we actually are, you know, I mean, Rick probably just mentioned sometimes is, you know, at the moment, you know, we are distributed in our products in over 140 countries. You know, it's unbelievable. You know, sometimes when new territories or new countries pop up, you know, maybe that's a bad thing about my knowledge of geography. But sometimes I think, you know, where's that country on the map? You know, it's so many. You know, it is true, isn't it? You know, and with different markets, there are different challenges. You know, different you know life cycle, I guess, in fire. Expertise and regimes of codes and standards, but it's fascinating, and it's not just countries. It's big part is still marine business as well. You know, so 10% probably.
Yeah.
10% probably of our turnover is marine business. You know, so it's quite unusual. Sometimes a few years ago, I got a phone call on someone struggling with a product, and I thought, "Where are you?" And it turns out it was a really one of these really big yachts. You know, like 5-6 stories high. Cayman Islands, you know.
Oh wow!
You know, I couldn't believe it. You know, it's unbelievable.
But you actually said it right, talking about the codes and standards. You know, where things are used in different parts of the world, and you know, we are a niche product in a niche industry. And incidentally, although you know the name Detector Testers, well, you know, we do more than just test detectors. You know. We also, you know, battery testing, intelligibility testing through the Bedrock product lines that we carry. So it's actually quite a bit more. Our portfolio over the years has really expanded. But all of this stuff is to be code compliant. It's required by virtually every country out there. I mean, obviously, and you had mentioned it, because I know you do. Inspect Point does a lot of business up there as well. Canada, as you know, ULC 536 and a few other codes up there. The US obviously is NFPA, but NFPA is also followed in a lot of countries down in Latin America, as well as it's very strong over in the Middle East, correct, Oliver?
It is.
And Oliver, you yourself, you're on, I mean, multiple working groups over there in the UK. And it's like every country, you know, Australia has AS 1851. So we're involved in that. We also have representatives over in Germany, which what are the German
standards? DIN standards, and then we've got in the UK we've got the BS 5039 standards. You know, so and then we've got France. You know, with colleagues on there. But yeah, it's you know it's some ways there's slight variations sometimes, aren't they, Rick? But you know, and the gist of it is quite many similarities as well. You know, and yeah, it's quite interesting, isn't it?
Yeah, do most of them? I mean, I know 72 and ULC pretty well, Oliver. Is it pretty standard? Like we're doing annual, you know, detector test. We're essentially doing annual frequencies on the fire alarm system because that's the brains of the fire protection, right? I know certain people might, you know, on the sprinkler suppression side, you know, might not think that way, but it is the brain of the system, right? And
it is.
With the detection, it's the number one thing to get people out of the building. And into safety, and obviously know if there's a fire going on. So
absolutely. So basically, an annual test, maybe split into twice a year, or but it is the same thing effectively.
But sprinklers and suppression, though, you know, work hand in hand with detection. You know, and it's funny because a lot of times it's like, oh, they're the sprinkler guys or those are the detector guys. But really, I mean, you know, suppression and detection save lives. You know, it's funny over, you know, Oliver's way. I don't think sprinklers are nearly as prevalent as they are here.
No.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, it is. I was amazed when I saw the difference. It was just, I don't know, I guess it's the way the market developed.
Yeah, it's just maybe you know, a lot of retrofitting sprinklers isn't the easiest either. So maybe it's the you know, how old the buildings are and everything. But obviously having it work all together. And a lot of companies, and I know this in North America and definitely happens in South America as well, where these companies, these service providers that are buying the products from you guys, and even our product too, they're not just doing fire alarm or just doing sprinkler anymore. They're doing everything. So if you're a technician, inspector, engineer, whatever you want to call yourself, you have to know not just your one trade that you've known for the last 10, 20 years. You got to kind of know different parts of it now, because all these service providers are expanding into different aspects.
Absolutely. Absolutely. You do. And everybody, you know, it's like more and more people want to expand what they're able to do. So yeah, you're right. You have to be well-rounded.
Yeah. Question on the like the you know, the probably the biggest line is your detection testing equipment on the smoke and heat side. With the different kind of lines, like has the industries, and I guess this probably differs on different markets, has it transitioned to the newer technologies where I know XTR2 just came out, but has it transitioned faster than you expected to like the Testifire versions, or is it sticking with the kind of the cans of smoke like traditionally? You know, how has that happened over time and the adoption, I guess?
Well, I mean, it's funny. Everybody was so used to just a can of smoke. I mean, let's face it, it's very simple. I mean, there's not much that can go wrong with it. You press the button, the smoke comes out. But there are drawbacks to that. You know, number one is, you know, residue, which over time can, you know, leaves a film on there. Then you can get particulates that are going to reduce, you know, make the detector undersensitive or oversensitive. Plus also, then, you know, some of the aerosol smokes that were out there actually caused, over time, there were plastic compatibility issues, and there was cracking of the detectors. But, you know, it's funny, when we first started offering the electronic smoke generation, yeah, it was a slow uptake, but now we see it gaining momentum. I mean, and one major driver of that, and I'm going to give a plug for Oliver, since he just got on this new sustainability ESG Save the Dolphins working group for your alarm.
Thank you very much.
I'm not totally slagging you off. Everybody is environmentally conscious. I mean, they are, you know, we have to all be good global citizens, and, you know, regulations are thundering down upon us.
Yep.
You know, we are continually, I mean, I was down at EPA in Washington meeting with them again in June. I mean, regulations are always tightening up, they're strengthening. So we're going to have to get away from canned smoke eventually, and it's going to come sooner than people realize,
Right.
because environmentally, it's just not good. And, you know, the manufacturing options are getting less and less. Supplies there are drying up, and the cost is going crazy. So
yep.
This is just, it's a much better product. Also, detectors are getting smarter. So, you know, they have pre-alarm verification and algorithms, and, you know, so you have to have a smart product to be able to, you know, test them.
Right.
And that's really, so we have seen it gaining a lot of momentum now, which is, it's nice to see.
Yeah, definitely.
And I guess I said, you know, just saying what Rick has said as well, in other markets, you know, 10 years ago when Testifire was launched, well before my time, because I've been here with 7 years now. But, you know, it's quite a niche product. Now it's not a niche product anymore. You know, Testifire and electronic smoke is a sort of a mainstream category. You know, it's over the last few years, it was the fastest growing category for us. And, you know, and you expect it in some countries to be really popular, you know, just imagine saying that because of, you know, Germany, a reputation of technology, and, you know, a lot of fire technologies.
Actually, Oliver, Germans, the reputation, if you want to talk about that, the Germans have a sense of humor failure, don't they?
Do you know, maybe they have, you know.
Wait a minute.
He's been in the UK now, so you know.
Oh no,
he's got a mix.
I'm still very German, you know.
All right, I apologize. That was my I didn't realize that was my outside voice. I apologize.
Bad Rick. But, you know, so you would expect markets like Germany to be really, you know, behind Testifire for a long time, and they are. But then suddenly other markets and other regions like the Middle East suddenly popped up, and it's a product where you think, oh, should it be popular there? But suddenly it's raised because the expectation is different. So it's really becoming more, and like I said, Rick said, I mean, the environmental aspect is quite big. And just to illustrate a little bit, is in the sort of latest technology, electronic smoke, they only use 1% of the smoke stimulus that or liquid that a traditional aerosol uses. Just 1%. Which is a massive difference, isn't it? And there's no danger whatsoever to detect it. It's far better for the environment. There's so much legislation coming. In Europe is Rick and I speak a lot about European regulations and environmental regulations, and also on your side. And there's so much happening at the moment.
We're always. I mean, Oliver and I we're sort of. I guess we're sort of sad lives, because we talk about this all the time. It gets kind of boring.
So, Rick, can I just sort of stop you? So you said I'm sad. We live sad lives, and I've got no sense of humor as well. Drew, help me here.
This is great. I just have to sit back and let you guys banter. This is fun.
Well, this is good. Oliver and I, we're going to take this on the road. We had to break in some new material. In addition, and really, so the environmental drivers and the performance, but also things you normally don't even think of, like transportation and storage. Think about these technicians. If we have a company that needs, they're out of smoke. All right, you got to ship me this overnight. As soon as you put that in the air, it's considered hazmat, and woo, expensive ship. Plus, once they get it, if you're in, like, let's say in Arizona, or well, hell, I mean, with global warming, even where Oliver is now, it's like how many 90 degrees there. If the technicians leave a case of smoke in the van.
Oh yeah.
What's an aerosol can going to do when that van temperature gets up to, I don't know, 120, 140 degrees Fahrenheit? I don't know what that is in Celsius, Oliver. I apologize. But there's so many issues, though. It's just electronic smoke generation is the way to go.
Yeah, it seems like it's going to eventually be phased out, probably within, I would think, the next 10 to 15 years. It just makes sense. The technology is moving that way. Regulations are that way. The cost is going to if the cost of shipping and just maintenance and just the product, like, it's just going to phase out, right? It makes sense.
Yeah.
So kind of pivoting back, on the other side of the product is, Rick, you're heavily involved in a lot of the codes and standards, and obviously I didn't know you're involved with some of the EPA and some of that regulation too. I'm going to talk specifically about 72 here, and I know what's going on with ULC, but what is a new wave? You hear about remote testing a lot and the Internet of Things, but in general, over the last 10 years, what is 72 trying to do? Maybe the top 3 or 4 kind of bullets. What are they trying to do with the new codes within 72?
All right. Well, just so everyone's aware where we are in the process right now. So NFPA 72 is revised every 3 years. And right now we're in cycle. We just had the second draft meetings this past July, either virtually, depending on your committee, or in person in lovely Kansas City. The report for the second draft will be out in May, I believe, nice. 24, and then Nitman closing date is the end of March of 24, and then we're going to be voting on it in so then it will get, once it's given its blessing, passes the vote, and given its blessing by the Standards Council, then you'll have that be published, the latest edition, in late summer, early fall of 2024, and that'll be NFPA 2025 edition. And that's actually going to be the 13th edition of NFPA 72. The first one was delivered in, I think it was 1993. Okay. But like the top things, like the past edition, that's just, the changes happening now. For instance, mass notification, especially, you hear these school shootings, et cetera, all mass notification systems now must be UL 2572 listed. Cybersecurity, that's on everybody's mind, because a lot of fire alarms now are, anytime you have access, and this is where the remote access comes in. Anytime you have access to the outside, that's a potential pathway for a hacker or somebody to get in. So, and remote access, and I mean, you see it in the detection side and the sprinkler and suppression side. You're able to do so much from off-site. Oliver, didn't recently, I think your alarm just left this summer. They put out some guidance, a guidance paper for remote access, didn't they?
And the remote services I did. So yeah, because on our side, last year was quite a big year because EN 50710, which deals with remote services, was became effective, I think, in May last year. And that is a really very topical area now as well. And so Euroalarm have put out sort of quite a bit of content, including webinars, a few weeks ago, which I think you were on it as well, weren't you? So. But yeah, it's I think as it comes back to what you say, Drew, what you mentioned earlier, is that a lot of the sort of themes, there might be variations of the themes, but they are similar in on your side of the pond or on our side as well, and in Europe. So it's quite exciting time. So but it's a lot of it is happening right now.
No, it's great. Yeah, the 72 seems to be ahead of a lot of the other codes that I'm about to sit on 25 for sprinkler, and then I'm involved in a lot of the others, but it just seems ahead, and a lot of it's connected to software, which usually is ahead of the times anyway, because that's what it's kind of being pushed that way. And even I think remote and IoT was one of the first standards that it was introduced to, right? And it's easier to do that technology because it is connected, it's all wired, it's low voltage. So yeah, I'd be interested to see. I would like to dive into that cyber side a little bit more, because we're heavily involved on the software side. But if you're able to remote access in, that's just going to get more complicated as things as we progress, right?
Oh,
And
absolutely.
be different type of hacking and all that, but everything's going to be connected at that point. So that's how Target got hacked a few years ago, through the HVAC system. So,
and I mean, COVID really accelerated the need to have remote access. I mean, well, Drew, you and I sit on NFPA 915, remote inspections. I mean, being off site, I mean, that's becoming more and more commonplace. And other issues then are created by that. Like another thing NFPA 72 is dealing with now, during COVID, people were not going into the workplace. We were doing social distancing, masking. Well, guess what? The supervising station, that's a big controversy now. How can you be a supervising station working out of, your apartment, and the dog's barking in the background? So they're trying to straighten some things out with that. Or, if you have like, Drew, you have twins, the twins are, stapling their heads to the floor, or, on fire. So there are a lot of changes, even like things that have been there for ages, like, ionization, ion detectors. That's being pulled out of the code because they're going, see you later. Everything now is going, multi-criteria.
right.
Then there's other continually new working groups coming up. Like I mentioned before, that Euroalarm, what were you on, a sustainability group for?
So I'm on the, they just created those recently, so for environment and sustainability, because of course it does cover a lot of areas. Like I said earlier, at the moment, you've got a lot of sort of topics of and a European consultation on PFAS. So forever, some people refer to as forever chemicals, and where they are, and that if those restrictions go through, it's a huge impact on a lot of people. But that group covers everything from from right to repair, eco design for sustainable products, green claims directive, recycling regulations, etc., and F-gas as well. So it's just it's a lot, and it's certainly, I think there's a need to bring it all together, both to share among the members, because you almost have to be an expert in everything, and that's quite challenging. And then also to what you can do to sort of make sure you influence or make your voice, your concerns heard as well. So massive trends.
But there's
go ahead, Rick.
One thing that's not changing, and that is the need to test detectors. I mean, in 72, you visually have to inspect them, the visual inspection once a year, and then functionally testing. And that's and again, that's where XTR2 comes in, and traceability of that test. And again, I won't get into that, Oliver. I'll leave that more for you, because that's your baby that you've involved in since it's birth.
So yeah, let's get into it. Let's get into it now. So this, I was, we came down to our CEO Pat and I came down to SDi back in the springtime. We talked about this new technology. It was really, really cool to see. I knew about Testifire and obviously a lot of the solo products from prior, from just being in the industry for a bunch of years. But I really liked what you guys were debuting at NFPA. So I guess explain to the listenership on Oliver what the XTR2 kind of does compared to what it did before, and then what the plans are for it.
Okay, so we launched XTR2, Testifire XTR2, which is the full name. It's a sort of a second generation all-in-one tester. So it does smoke and heat testing. Do you know what people sort of already know us from? But what it does also is it captures the digital record of the test, and that's quite a big deal. Do you know, because over the years, I mean, you're a software guy, you're a compliance guy, so you know this. But it's a lot of our customers said it's great that we do functional tests, and we have to do them, and it's the right thing to do. But if you can't demonstrate that you've done it, it's like you haven't done it. And there's always been. So I think just generally over the years, and I think probably the last 5 years really accelerated, more sort of awareness about compliance, better audit trails, making sure that you have got it covered and you're doing the right thing, and that's where it comes from. So it's not just testing. Suddenly, a record that is digital records, which is then sort of turned into a report. So automated PDF report, and then of course you have got these reports or even the raw data you can share with other people, including your customers or your building owners, etc. And from our side, the big technology difference is that it's automated. It's not just what you have is you have an automated start, and then you have got quite a lot of technology in the cup, that suddenly knows when a detector goes into activation, and then makes a decision if it's a pass or fail. So. Yep. So what I have, so hopefully you can see a little. I actually have got this little baby here. So this is what it looks like, and so a smoke heat tester, which is, what Rick said as well. A lot of it is towards multi-criteria detectors, and there's a trend towards them, and also benefits from all-in-one. It's just you have one of these things rather than a smoke tester and a separate heat tester. And what it does is, just imagine you have a detector. So I've just at the moment I've got in a smoke setting. On a detector, if it goes over, it would start a test, and when it goes into activation, the red light would come on, and that the tester here would pick it up. So just to demonstrate a little bit and hopefully you can see it. Detector is in, starts testing smoke. You can see the light here happening, and then when the detector goes into activation, and the unit would pick up the light, and I'm just doing that now, and then you see green suddenly appearing, and actually goes a little bit further, automatically now starts clearing as well, and put a lot of smoke through, fresh air through it as well, and that ensures that there's no reactivation of the detector. So just making testing very, very easy. And suddenly what you have is, you've got an automated start. You have got a decision made by the test, if it's a pass or fail, and the date time stamping that, you're mapping that on the day when you're testing, and suddenly it's a lot more data, something you can't really falsify that easily, and you have got to suddenly prove that it's done. It's quite clever how it's done as well. It's I think
I tossed just a quick website.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and obviously the detector's there, but I really like that it's communicating back to a software platform, and that's where I think the optimization. And sorry to steal your words, but I think that's where the optimization happens, because you're gathering that, and you're not having to write it down anymore. It's just being logged, right?
Do you know what? That's what it actually is. Automatically logged. It's really hassle-free. And then when something doesn't work, it's not some technician saying it doesn't work. It's actually the test equipment telling you it doesn't work. And to be honest, that's really what is important for our customers as well, because actually it's all about efficiencies and, making sure that you identify them and then you can fix them to make sure that you're compliant. And this tool does it. It's quite clever how it does it. I think the one point I would probably say, and I think Rick is probably saying, yeah, it's really actually, at the heart of everything we do is, we are really, our equipment works with every single detector, really irrespective what brand, what model, what region. It has to work with everyone and be really truly universal. Because you never know as a technician when you're turning up on a site what detector you're testing on the day. And it does. And it's so when we develop a product like this, we test on so many detectors. I think just for this product, I think we had 500 different detectors. We had to test it on. I think Rick personally probably cursed me throughout the time period because a lot of the detectors for the year and North American and market he had to source, and he's cursing me saying, Oliver, why do you have to get me to get more detectors over? But it is what it is, isn't it? So it's really important.
No, that's great. It's just, that about the fire alarm market is, you talk to the distributors or the service providers doing fire alarm work out there, and they might be an authorized distributor for Notifier, Edwards, Siemens, Potter, whoever, right? But when they're doing inspections, they're doing on everything, and if you can't have something that works on everything, it's and similar to our product, right? You have to be able to work on everything. And I know over the years the big manufacturers have tried to make things proprietary, right? Which I think it should be more of an open market. You should be able to work on whatever you need to work on, and that's my opinion. And I think that's best for fire safety anyway. Don't lock it down, but you have to have equipment out there and platforms to be able to work on different pieces.
Rick, you probably have got a similar view, but for us, it's I think I agree. It should be working for with everyone. It should be the reality on the ground. I think is that there's so many different types of detectors. Not everything is just one make and one brand. And then also there's so many legacy detectors. Even during some of the beta trials we have, I've come across detectors where I had to go back to manufacturers and our own library of detectors to identify detectors that were 40 years old but were still on site and were still working. So and that's a little bit the reality as well. And I guess it's the same in a lot of countries. So why would you make I think if you make it open to everyone, I think is more collaborative, because we haven't really discussed this yet, but you're a software company, aren't you? You look at it, what we've just generated, what excites you, digital records. They're beneficial to lots of people. You probably think, hey, that would be good for us as well, maybe. And there's certainly a lot more opportunities for sharing and adding value with that sort of data, be it in your type of products as well with others. So yeah.
Yeah, there's definitely something there to, because we do a lot of the NFPA 72 and ULC. That's perfect data for what we give to the service provider, a nice report, and then obviously they're going to do the fixes and deficiency repairs accordingly. So I think there's a perfect synergy. You guys have created a almost perfect timing with what we're talking about.
It would be nice to see what you think, but because of course, sometimes when Rick and I have this discussion, we see, we hear, it's the all singing and dancing system where everything is one system, one manufacturer. But there's still a lot of conventional systems out there. In my markets, when I look at it, is a lot of it is over 50%. And at least now we've got a solution which can sort of give you a record of something that has been done on even a really old legacy system, and that can't be a bad thing. I think can only be a good thing. And even if we have got something really advanced, we have actually a record of some function testing. It tells you what has failed, and even with the addressable system, it tells you when something has passed, but it doesn't really say when a detector has failed. And our stuff does it,
That's great.
It could potentially be a huge liability issue, and you know, for not keeping this, you know, documentation properly, and you know, not having an audit trail, if you will, or traceability. And this, you know, it protects not only the building, you know, the occupants, the building owners that are having these tests done for them, but it protects the fire alarm companies, the technicians that are actually doing the testing. Because if something, you know, down the road happens, well, there's a record that you were there, you did it. This is the result. It happened on this date and time, and that's only, you know, that's a good thing.
Yeah, and I think it evolves the, you know, and it optimizes the testing process, like you said, where previously and before us, there's a competitor of ours out there that you had to go up and prove that you were there by scanning a detector. But how do you do that all the way in the air? And it takes extra step. But if you guys are already up there doing the test, you grab that, hey, I was there at this time, I've got this result, right? Boom. No need for scanning anymore, right?
God, you're very good at selling this. You know, maybe you should recruit them. You know, what do you think, Rick?
Well, absolutely. But, you know, and that goes even further. I mean, the one thing which is part of our, you know, company culture is our continuous improvement and development. I mean, so this is coming to the market now, but we want, you know, we want to be partnerships, you know, with Inspect Point to you know, get you know, get our data into your system, and, you know, just make it easier, eventually make it a seamless, you know, not a pain point.
Right.
You know, it should be just nice and easy. And that's where hopefully we'll get to that point.
Yeah, because majority of the fire alarm devices are going to be the detection testing, right? Or the detection and initiating the equipment. But horns and strobes and, you know, other pulse stations, they're still going to have to do that. So we're grabbing the big bulk of it with this product and software platform with your guys, but it's not going to grab everything. So I think collaborating there, it just makes it a lot more seamless.
Yeah, it's quite exciting, isn't it? You know, because you know, I think, you know, it's I think you saw it at NFPA, didn't you? So and also when you went to see it at SDi, and you know, I was unfortunately not in Vegas, you know, because of being German. I was at the same time in Germany launching it as well, and it was quite an interesting experience because for the first time people saw what we were doing, you know, and suddenly, you know, it's not just traditional aerosol testing; it's actually doing some really more than testing and you know, digital records reporting, and suddenly you can see people sort of thinking, what if he did this? What if he linked it with this? What if he used both data sets? And suddenly, you know, I think all of those put together, you're just adding value and making fire safety better, you know, and it's just the start. I think, you know, you in the software world, you know, we're a little bit more now software. I think, you know, if you know, talk to us in 12 months time, you know, we would be talking about completely different things again, because you know, the product would have evolved, and, you know, there's so many things, you know, in the pipeline we want to do. So really,
well, you can evolve the product, as you guys know. Product takes a while, right? And testing equipment's not as tough as some of the obviously fire alarm equipment, where it's got to be tested, listed, and approved and all that. On the software side, you can iterate so quickly. Like you can, like literally, we throw out 20 to 30 new products a month. There's some small, but there's some big ones. But you can really iterate on software and that digital side quick. And I'm sure you guys have learned that over the last year or two developing this.
I mean, and we have, and you know, Rick has been, and his team has been really big in helping with beta testing and getting customer feedback. And you know, and of course, you know, the digital record is a great thing for compliance, but we've already had so much customer feedback as, you know, could you do this? Just because, I mean, the product is controlled by an app as well, and suddenly changes are easy to make. So if you want to maybe, you know, in future change smoke profiles, or do you know, optimize for certain manufacturers or brands, you know, all of this is possible, do you know? And beforehand we had never that possibility, do you know? Now, do you know, you will have you know, a mobile phone which you can use to control it. But you know, if you needed to update firmware, you can do it over the air updates as well. You know, it's I think its possibilities are endless to keep updating it and keeping a product really sort of adapting to the needs. And you really have to, because all these detectors out there are getting smarter, more technology. And I guess, you know, that's a reason why our stuff needs to be smarter and faster as well. So I think it's a natural transition towards those type of products, because the whole market is going to that side of more advanced technology.
Yeah, no,
Absolutely.
it's great. Rick, you got anything else on this? So we can I got a couple questions that you guys don't know are coming. So I don't know if you've heard the podcast before, but I'll get into them in a second.
Yeah, I think we've covered everything, Oliver. I believe we have.
I think so. And you can always go on our website and SDi's website to read more about it. So it's nice and easy.
Yeah, and as we obviously partner up on some stuff more, we'll obviously get some of that out to the market and all that. And I'm really excited to kind of work with you guys in this product. So
Likewise.
All right, so this is called I call it the quick response round. So I have a couple just quick hit questions. You can give a little explanation to it, but I'll start with you, Rick. You're involved obviously with a lot of different codes out there. What is your favorite for NFPA specifically?
Favorite for let's see. I mean, obviously, the first one code I got onto no longer exists. That was carbon monoxide 720s.
All right.
72 sucked that up. But I mean, probably just test and maintenance, because I've been so heavily involved in that. But actually, there's some new codes that I managed to get myself onto. NFPA 461 spaceports, fire protection of spaceports.
Yeah, I see that. That's really cool.
Some interesting stuff there, and also NFPA 420. Cannabis protection in the cannabis grow houses and processing centers. It's really neat when you do a code that's developed from the ground up rather than always been there. It's really sort of fun to put one together. I managed to also get onto as you did 915 and 715 fuel gas. And we're able to help build that up from the ground. So it's sort of neat watching that come to fruition. A lot of work.
Those I know I think I'm supposed to roll on to 420 once things get I don't know. I know it's been slow go getting the standard rolled out, but I think there's going to be more technical committee. I think I'm set to roll onto that. But spaceports, I would love to actually pick your brain on sometime, because that's it's just it's a cool topic that nobody really knows about, right? You obviously need fire protection.
Sure. Absolutely.
I'm always jealous when I hear Rick saying about these fantastic working groups, and they're spaceports. I mean, how cool is that? Is it just so I'm pleased you didn't ask me the same question, because I couldn't really top that.
They don't have a cannabis standard over in the UK.
No, maybe in Holland, but not in the UK. Maybe Rick, we have to ask Sander. So maybe we'll bring him in one of the podcasts.
Yeah, we can ask Sander over at Bedrock. The Netherlands, we've got that going on.
Do you know what, Drew? That would be a funny one. A straight talking Dutchman. No bullshit. That would be quite a funny. One.
that would be a fun one. Oliver, football club. Are you a Farnham Town fan? What's your football club?
So I've got two. So I was when I was living in Germany, I was Bayern Munich. So that's it, and I was a member of Bayern Munich Football Club as well. So
oh wow.
So that is, I'm quite proud. And then when I came to England, being German is not the most popular thing and cool thing in England. But there was a very famous German player just playing for Tottenham Hotspurs called Jürgen Klinsmann. And I think he was a national coach in the US. And suddenly everyone, Jürgen made Germans cool. So I thought I have to support Spurs. So yeah.
That's great. That's great. All right, final question, Rick. Do you call it a pork roll or Taylor ham?
Pork roll.
All right.
Pork roll. Wow, that was a real Jersey-centric question, but pork roll.
I don't even know what you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Unless you're from the Northeast or Jersey, it's a delicacy in New Jersey.
We'll get it. Delicacy in New Jersey.
No comments.
No comments. Ich verstehe nix. Keine Ahnung.
Well, thanks again, guys, for being on the Fire Protection Podcast. Again, there's a lot to come of this, and I'm really excited to see this product take off in the market. Where can we find, I guess, SDi and Detector Testers? Where can people find out about the product?
You can go to either one of our websites, sdifire.com or detectortesters.com. We've been advertising all over there, and obviously we're on social media, LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter. So definitely can find it anywhere if you look. Although it surprises me because it seems like at least once every year somebody shows up at our stand at NFPA and says, "I've been looking for a product like this my whole life," and they're holding up Solo 330, which is the smoke dispenser that first hit the market in 2001. And I'm like, what have you been, under a rock? Where have you been?
Right. Do you not own a phone, right? Or do you have email?
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh, that's great. Well, cool. Thanks, guys. Thanks, Rick. Thanks, Oliver, for coming on. And
Thank you very much.
yeah, we'll get this out here soon, and looking forward to furthering the partnership down the road.
Sounds good.
All right.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, guys. This was episode 51 of the Fire Protection Podcast, powered by Inspect Point. Want to thank again Rick and Oliver for stopping on the podcast today from SDi Detector Tester. Some really cool technology that they've come about with their products, and looking forward to seeing it here down the road in the future. And there's some really cool stuff that this will be able to do and optimize the fire alarm testing process. So more to come with the podcast. A lot of content coming out in the next couple months. So stay tuned, and we'll see you again soon.